Do you think every bumper video about family should end with lions on the ground? Do you hear that? It's good to be with you guys. As we go to start this series today, it's on family. You know, a group of us, those of us on the preaching team, Jenny Kemp, who leads the service here, we all sat down and we got to have a conversation about what would be really meaningful or helpful to talk about with our congregation over the next couple of months. And as we were making some plans, and one topic kept popping up, and it was this idea of family. And so that's what this moment is. And over the next 3 weeks, we're going to focus in on family. I know that can look really different for different people. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, I think we define family more or less as just the people in your life that you care about enough to call family. Sometimes that's the people you're born with. Sometimes that's the people you choose along the way. And that makes it complicated because anytime you're close with somebody, anytime you're that close to somebody, you let in some complexity. I see smiles around the room being like, yeah. And it is. It can be a little difficult. So here's the goal. I hope that this becomes a blessing to you guys. I hope this becomes a blessing for all of us. And in particular with today, I'm gonna talk about something that I think can be a little harder to talk about, maybe something we don't always wanna talk about when it comes to family, or it just kind of is quieted down, but I think it's really important. And the goal of walking through what we're gonna walk through today is that we'd feel some freedom as family members, as people who love the people in our lives or the people who matter most to us. And I hope that you come to see how this unfolds. You hear more in just a moment. But to get into this, I would love to start with a story. Right before I got married, I did something I'd never done before, and I decided to go to a gym and lift weights. I decided I should probably work on this, and that would be a great gift for my wife, and that whole type of a thing. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to the gym, and I'm gonna lift some weights. That's what I'm gonna do. And I'd never done this. I grew up playing soccer year round. I was always in athletics and different things. I rode my bike all of the time, all of that, but I'd never formally done weight training. And so this was a new venture for me. I knew nothing. And so I don't know if you remember, do you remember the first time that you stepped into, if you haven't, it's okay, but if you stepped into a gym, into a weight room and you didn't know what you were doing, do you remember what that was like? You're there's bars and cables and plates and everybody's standing in front of a mirror trying to look awesome. What is this place, right? What do you do with all of this? And the instructions are just a picture. You never really know what's going on. And so I thought, well, all right, I'm gonna do this, but I don't wanna do it alone. So I invited a friend to come with me. He also had never lifted a weight in his life. He had never even done athletics growing up. He just thought, it'd be better to be stronger and a little healthier, and let's go. I thought, you're my kind of speed, let's do this. So we went to the gym together, and I remember walking in and just going, I don't know what to do. And he looks at me and he's like, what do we do? And I said, well, let's go to this one. And it was a weight bench for doing bench press. And I'd seen, I'd heard and I thought I knew enough to know what to do with that. And so we load up some weight on the press, and you lay on your back and you just push it off your chest and you do this, right? And I quickly learned why people put the little weight clips on the thing, because when one arm was too weak, all the weights went flying off, and that becomes a big disaster in the gym, and it's really embarrassing, and everybody immediately knows who you are, right? You're that guy now. And so, but we made it through. We made it through, and we did all of that. And then came the time where it's okay, so maybe some lower body. And then I was like, what I think we should do is squats, because I hear that's a really good exercise to be able to do for your lower body, and we should do that. So we go over to the squat rack. And I'd never done this in my life. I'd read something ahead of time that was go down to 90 degrees, don't let your knees stick out past your toes or you'll blow your knees out. And that was the extent of my knowledge. And so my buddy gets under this and he's getting ready to squat, to lift the weight off the squat rack. And I had looked at him and I said, how much do you want to lift? And he said, I don't know, I've never done this before. And I said, okay, your legs are strong muscles here. And I put a 45 on each side. So that's 135 pounds. And he gets up underneath it, and I take a step back to look at him, and I'm like, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look like very much weight. And so I just thought, I think your legs are one of the strongest muscles in your body. You could totally lift more than this, I bet you. And so I just took another 45 and I put it on each side. So now it's 225 pounds. He's never been to a gym in his life. He's never lifted a weight in his life. And this is gonna be his first foray into doing squats. I know things now that I didn't know then. Right? And so he goes to get under it, and he's like, I'm kind of nervous. I don't think I can lift this. And I was like, your leg muscles are really strong, man. I bet you can do it. And I said, besides, I'm here. I'll spot you. I have no idea what that means. You ever spotted somebody doing a squat before? It's awkward. I don't know what you do or how you do that well. And so he goes and he gets underneath of it. I go to spot him just standing in front of him, which is weird. And And he goes and he stands up under it. And the moment he stands up under it, his face kind of changes colors because he's not breathing and he's shaking. And I just immediately take steps back. I'm like, spotting over, this isn't gonna work out. And then he goes to lower himself down. And the moment his knees bend, everything starts to shake and his legs buckle and he just goes flying. And I learned a term this last week called ditch the weight that I did not know then. And we didn't talk about that then. And so what happened was he went back with the weight into the weight room, didn't let go of the thing. He just let it be his momentum that took him out of the squat rack. And so he goes crashing down, hits a machine on the way, doesn't let go and hits his head on the bar, about cleans his clock and almost knocks himself out. This is so loud. These are like steel plates, you guys, in an old school gym. And people came running who worked there because this was such chaos that they were like, who's hurt, who's broken, is everything okay? Like that type of moment. And they all ran over to see like what just happened, what was going on. And it was embarrassing. And he never lifted with me again, right? And I learned something that day. And by the way, and I have to say this, I said this last hour too, I recognize there are those of you in this room that are personal trainers or like you're super into CrossFit and you have a lot of things that you want to tell me right now. I get it. I've learned a lot since then. This was at the very beginning of trying to figure some things out. And the things that I learned was one, if you're gonna start going to learn to lift weights and you know nothing about anything with that, you should probably go with somebody who can teach you, or maybe pay a trainer, or like learn how to do this safely for yourself, right? Don't do what I did. That'd be number one, and that's just like a legal disclaimer that we should all hear right now. Number two, and this is more in particular for what I think we're gonna talk about today, and it's this. I learned that you never wanna add more weight to someone than what they're actually able or willing to carry, or they're gonna get hurt in the end. And the reason that I'm sharing this with you is because I realized that on that day in the gym, I ended up doing to my friend what I think many times we often do with people in our families. And that's what I actually want to talk about today. Sometimes we place extra weight upon the shoulders of the people that we love and care about that they aren't actually meant to carry. And this is something that happens. As I say this out loud, some of you guys in the room immediately have your own experiences and your own thoughts and feelings. And these are things we rarely ever talk about when it comes to family. But this is a really big deal when it comes to being a part of a family or loving the people in your family or being in that thing yourself with this, right? What happens when we do this is in the beginning, people will pick up the weight, and I'll explain what some of this looks like, but they'll pick this up along the way. Right? We'll carry the weight of somebody else that somebody else put on us, just like me adding weight to a squat bar. And you start to carry. At first, it's just kind of frustrating or might be annoying or a little limiting, but you carry that thing long enough and what ends up happening is your knees start to shake and your legs start to buckle and it can actually just crush the life out of somebody. And people get hurt along the way. I want to ask you a couple of questions, and I don't want you to raise your hands. I just want you to think about this for yourself. How many of you have ever felt like you've had to carry the weight of someone in your family's expectations that they put on you? And because you care, and because you're a family member, because that's how it goes, you got under that bar and you decided, I'm gonna carry it. And so you did, and then what probably was a little awkward and weird at first eventually just became this burden that you began to carry with you in your life. Some of you maybe have been carrying this for a very long time and you get tired by this, you get fatigued by it, and eventually it just becomes a weight that's almost too heavy to carry. It can be crushing for some of us. It's real. It can be very hard. How many of us as young kids, or even as adult children, right? Because we always have parents or people in our lives, we felt like sometimes our parents or the people in our lives, they cared more about their reputation than they did our relationship. And so there's moments where they wanted you to be a certain way or do something that was who they needed you to be for themselves to feel okay. And meanwhile, you just felt like you as a human were shrinking. Or living your life carrying the weight of someone else's desires or things and not being honest to your own. And you just felt pinned by that over a period of time. And it gets really heavy and it gets really hard to carry. Or how many of us have had someone in our family who's just unhappy and dissatisfied and they struggle with worth or purpose or meaning or whatever that might be. And so we care about them And you look and you're like, I care about these people. I want something better for this person. And so I'm going to saddle up and I'll get under that bar and I'm going to lift it up and I'll even take it and try to carry that. And you've been living your life that way where you try to step in and be that thing for them and carry that weight. And you've tried to make them happy and you tried to show them that they're worthy and you've tried to show them that they're loved. But no matter what you do, enough never feels like enough. And eventually the weight of all of that just feels like it's a little bit crushing and you don't know how to stop carrying it. See, this is the thing that happens in family that almost becomes like an unspoken dynamic so often with so many of us. And it's hard. And it's not because we're malicious towards each other. You know, it isn't. It's because we're human. I think the irony here is that we tend to place the heaviest weight on the people we care the most about. And you could look and be like, why would we do that? But actually, it makes great sense if you think about it. Part of the reason why we place the heaviest weight on the people we care the most about is, well, because when you really love somebody and you trust somebody, that's what it would take to be willing to carry that kind of weight. Like, who else is going to do that for you and with you? I think it's just part of these really close dynamics that we have with people, especially with those that we come to call family. And that can get really difficult. That can get really hard to carry. And so hopefully this morning, as we go to address some of this, we're going to turn to a passage in the book of Proverbs, where Proverbs is all a book of wisdom, right? We're going to seek to glean some wisdom from one singular verse. And my hope in this is that whether you're a person in this room that goes, I think maybe sometimes I actually put some of this weight on other people, or whether you're somebody in this room that goes, I've been walking with some of this weight on my shoulders for a period of time, whoever that might be, wherever you might be, my hope is that perhaps we just find some of the freedom to take the weight off. We find some freedom to go, you know what? I don't think I need to put this on you. I think this is mine. Or we get to go, you know, I don't think I need to carry this the same way because that's yours. And that in doing so, we find ourselves in better places and spaces to love the people that we care about most in our lives and have the kind of relationships that I think God has for us when it comes to this thing called family. It's complicated, but it's really beautiful, friends. So I just am praying for freedom as we continue to make our way through this. If you have your Bibles, you can turn to Proverbs chapter 14, and we're going to work through one singular verse over the course of this morning, one verse. And I think it has this amazing kind of wisdom for us. There's this process that gets walked out. And when you see how these things kind of, this cause and effect, how these things work together, what ends up happening is I think it can create a tremendous kind of freedom for you in what it means to be a family member and what it means to engage family. And I'll tell you this, for me, this has become a very, very big deal. And part of me, I think sharing this with you all is just being able to share, man, this is something God's taught me that I hope becomes a blessing for you and your family as well. Let's read this verse together. Proverbs 14, verse 26. He says, in the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence, and his children will have a refuge. Right? Really, really short, really simple verse. I'll read it again because it is short. In the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence, and his children will have a refuge. Now, if you just read that with me and you find yourself going, okay, what's the gift in there for family? We're going to unpack that. We're going to unpack something that will become a blessing. And I want to do this in what hopefully becomes like a more helpful way. And so here's how I want you to think about this passage. It's this. The author is encouraging us to have one important experience that yields one powerful result and creates one significant impact. Right? I'll say that again. The author, I think, is encouraging us to have one important experience that is going to yield one powerful result and end up creating one significant impact. And that's the process we're going to work through. So let's start with this one important experience. And the way that I want to define that experience is just what the passage has to say here. It's this idea of being in the fear of the Lord. And that might sound kind of weird to you. You might be looking at me like, that's the important experience. What does that even mean? This word, this idea of in the fear of the Lord that this passage starts with, it's actually a really big deal in the book of Proverbs. It is. In fact, when Proverbs opens up, right, it's this collection of wisdom, chapter after chapter, saying after saying, moment after moment. It's all of this is about moving us towards practical wisdom for our everyday lives. And yet, when Proverbs opens up, the very first proverb that actually gets stated and displayed there, it's in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, it says this. It says, the fear of the Lord. So this is how it begins, you guys. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. So think of what this is putting a lot of emphasis on this idea of the fear of the Lord, of like, what is this thing? Because according to this idea of the fear of the Lord is where all of this real knowledge comes from. And the rest of the book is gonna really flow out of this moment. What is it, right? If it's this big of a deal, what is it? What is this idea of the fear of the Lord? And I think it's kind of hard for us because some of what's in this is a little bit lost on us because we're modern day English speakers, not ancient Hebrew speakers. So we have to remember, there's a really normal way for us to think of the idea of fear. You don't have to say it out loud, but just think for a moment. When I ask you, when you think of fear, what do you think of? What are the definitions? What are the understandings that you think of when it comes to this idea of fear? It's just a normal modern day person in the United States of America, whatever that might mean, right? Think of all that comes to your head. And I promise you, everything that comes to your head is probably, unless you're like are jumping to answers that maybe you already know or something, it's probably a little different than what they mean in this passage. The Bible, your Old Testament in particular, is written in ancient Hebrew. Your New Testament is written in Greek. So these words were written in Hebrew, originally in a Hebrew culture. And guys, they had words that meant things like fear and scared the way that we mean fear when we think of fear. Because when I think of fear, I think of like, I got really scared, right? I saw a scary movie and it made me afraid or something bad happened and it scared me, or something absolutely crazy happened and a high level of fear, I was terrified, right? I was crazy afraid, like really, high level of afraid. This is what we think of with fear. Some of us might even go to like, well, sometimes I get anxious and I become fearful. And it's this idea of being scared of what will happen and the unknowns and the things and all that we can't manage, right? There's this idea of fear. Well, there's Hebrew words for that. Right? One Hebrew word is pashad. And pashad carries this connotation of when you're scared or trembling, right? It's kind of a normal word that we would think of for fear. It's this, wow, something scared me. And I'm actually trembling. There's a moment in Job where he's lying awake at night in the book of Job in your Bibles, in your Old Testament. He's lying awake at night and he becomes anxious. Job chapter 4, verse 14, Job says this, "And dread came upon me, and trembling, which made all my bones shake." The word that they use there is pashad, right? Normal. And you look and you're like, Job's scared. Yeah, Job's really afraid and he's shaking in his bed. And that's how this is working. Makes sense to us. That's easy, right? We get that. Another word they would use in the Hebrew to talk about this is the word emah. Emah is when you actually experience being terrified. So this is like a lot of fear. This is something that creates terror or a sense of dread upon you. This word, it's what it does, carries terror and dread. There's this moment in Genesis where Abraham, he's laying in bed again. Why are both these examples in bed? I don't know. But he's laying in bed and he has this vision of darkness and it scares him. And this is what it says. It says, as the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, a dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. And what the author's trying to convey to us is like, this would have filled you or him with a sense of terror, a sense of dread. This is a hard moment for Abram in terms of what this darkness would have represented or what he would have felt. And they use that word, emah. It's there. So think about this. In Proverbs chapter 14, when we go to read our passage for the day, they don't use either of those words, even though they had perfectly appropriate words to talk about the kind of fear we most often associate. Instead, they use a different word, and this is called yirah. And I'd love us to remember this, so I'm gonna ask us to say it all together on three. We're gonna say yirah. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yirah. Yeah, this also gets translated in your Bible as fear, but it carries the idea of awe and reverence. How many of you, if I was like, all right, I'm gonna bring some fear today, you're like, he's gonna bring the awe and the reverence. No, we don't even go there. Our hearts don't go, we don't think this way. It's really foreign for us to think about fear in this context. It's weird for us. We don't associate it that way. Maybe respect, maybe that, but not fear. I was trying to explain this concept to my daughter this last week because I was like, maybe if I can explain it to her in a way she gets it, I'll have a prayer with you all too, right? And we can talk about this. And so I was explaining it and her eyes just kind of, as we're talking, she's sitting next to me and she just ignores it. Her eyes gloss over and I'm like, this is not working. So I look at her and I essentially go, okay, so I want you to imagine that we're back in Curacao 1 year ago. Me and my family, we got to go to Curacao and I spent the summer there as part of a sabbatical, and I spent the summer free diving in these beautiful clear waters with all of this fish and the ocean teeming with life and coral, and my daughter dove with me a lot, right? So I said, I want you to imagine that we're back in Curacao and you and I are out free diving in that beautiful blue water where you can see a football field in every direction. And I want you to imagine that amidst all the life and the coral and the things that we're seeing, all of a sudden a large whale comes swimming up past us. And we're in the middle of that moment. We're in the middle of the ocean. We're out swimming there. And as it comes to swim past us, right, when it gets to us, I want you to imagine that it breaches the surface and you get to see this, and then it comes back under and then it dives down into the depths and you see it swimming away. And I looked at my daughter and I said, how would you feel? And she said, scared. And I said, why? And she goes, because it's huge. It's a whale and I am small. Like, that is massive. And I said, scared, like I want to swim away from it and run for my life? Like scared, I got to get out of here scared? And she goes, no, it would be awesome. And I was like, okay, what would be awesome? She's like, Dad, it's a whale. And it would be like powerful and big and amazing. Like it would be an amazing experience. And I was like, one that would leave you wanting to swim away from the whale? She's like, no, I think I'd swim after the whale. That's yirah. I was like, you nailed it. Like what? And I told her, I was like, everything you just described and all the words you had to use, you get it now. That's what it is. That experience is this idea of yirah. It is awe and wonder. It is fear and respect. It is amazement and it is power. It doesn't leave you wanting to run away in fear. It leaves you with a respectful kind of fascination that makes you want to swim after it and see everything that it has to hold. It's this powerful moment. And all of this, I love this, because all of this is contained in this one simple moment where we in our Bibles just read, and the fear of the Lord. And we're like, got it. You see how complicated that is? See how much bigger and deeper it is? It's a way bigger understanding. It's a way deeper thing. And it's not the way that we think about this idea of fear. It's almost like we don't have the right word in our English vocabulary to get at whatever this thing is. And so it gets translated this way. But now you know, right? Now you can see it or you can feel it. So I want you to think back to Proverbs chapter 14, because now you have what you need to go back and read this. What is this one really important experience that the author is saying, man, this is what I want you to have. I want you to be in this. He says this, what? In the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence. See, this passage is encouraging us, man, there's this one really important experience to have, to be in it, to be in the fear of the Lord. It is in the, yirah of the Lord. This is to experience the truth and the beauty and the love and the power of God in a real way for yourself. This is different than, I went and I read a bunch of passages and then I memorized those things and I can now quote them out loud to other people, and I know that here. This is when somehow you experience the realness and the truth of what it was that you had here, and it suddenly becomes real to you in a different way. You go from just going, I know about these things, to being like, I don't just know about these things, I know these things. Something happened in me. I got to experience something powerful. I think about it this way. I read all these books about being a parent before I was one. I did. I read a lot of books about being a parent. I read books about developmental psychology. I read books about how to take a baby home and not hurt them. I read books about because I'd never had a baby. I didn't know what to do. Like I read all kinds, like, what do you feed the child? What do you do? I even read books about swaddling. People all thought I said swallowing earlier. Swaddling a child. And like, how do you wrap the kid up? And how do you do this? I read so many books about all these things, and I had all this knowledge. I'm like, man, I know so much about babies. And then a group of nurses were like, here you go, Dad. And they put my child, my daughter, in my hands for the first time. And I was immediately like, oh, wow. Like, like just this, I have no idea what to do, but this is amazing. But like, you should know, this is like, it was powerful. And I know that sounds like a bunch of nonsense, and you're like, is your daughter okay? She is, right? She is. I felt this weird combination of like, oh my gosh, I'm terrified, but also I have so much joy. I felt this strange combination of like, this is precious and like sacred territory that I've just stepped into, but also this idea of like, and I don't know what to do, but she's mine and I get to call her dad. And I felt this sense of, I get to call myself dad and her my daughter. And I felt this sense of unconditional love suddenly like wash over me in a sense where I just looked and I'm like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. And I don't even understand what's happened yet. Yirah, friends. It didn't matter everything I knew ahead of time. I mean, it did. It was helpful along the way, but this was a different type of experience here, right? In the fear of the Lord. In the yirah of the Lord, one has strong confidence. When my family and I were in Curacao, right? Actually, I'm sorry, guys, I just skipped ahead. I want to ask a couple of questions before I get to another story about Curacao. This is this idea of yirah. I share this, and I wanted to paint a really clear picture, and I hope you can see it, because I want to ask you a question. And the question that I want to ask you guys is, do you know what it is to experience the yirah of God in your life, for you? And I'm not asking you this as a group, I'm asking you this as individuals. I'm asking you this as people seeking to know and follow Jesus, or explore this thing, or figure this all out, right? Do you know what that moment is for you, what that experience is for you? Think of it this way. Do you remember when you experienced God as being in all things and through all things? And that he's holding and binding all of this that we call existence together. He is in everything and he is everywhere. And you realize the bigness of that, the vastness, and it moved you. And you just recognize this is powerful. And I don't even have words to describe it, but this is a really big deal. Do you remember when you experienced the love of God in a way that all of a sudden unconditional love stopped being like this fantasy of someday and it became the reality for your life right now? As you experienced the unconditional love and power of God in your own life and you found this isn't just something I hoped for, this is something I can ground my life in. It's that real for me. It's moved in me, it's changed. Do you remember the moment that God opened your eyes and your heart to this experience of who he really is? And you found yourself thinking, I don't have adequate words for this, but whatever just happened, this changes things for me. I'm gonna step into another moment right after this, and it's gonna be like a normal moment that I've had before, and yet it's not the same moment because something's different. Because this shifted something in me. Do you remember when you realized God's grace for you was as infinite and vast as he is? And instead of it becoming an idea, it became the fuel you live your life out of? That's yirah. That's the moment that you were like, God isn't just something I read about in a book. He's living, he's in this thing. And I have a relationship with him. I've engaged in this with him. I've had this encounter. I've had these moments. I've had this thought. And it occurs in different ways for different people. And I get that. But friends, that's yirah. And when you experience God as he actually is, there's awe and there's wonder and there's fear and there's respect. And there's amazement, and there's power, and there's love, and there's grace. And it's what the writer of Proverbs tells us. This experience is really important. And when we experience this really important thing, it yields a really specific result. And I want to go to that now, right? That first powerful experience is the yirah of God. It's being in the fear of the Lord. So what is the powerful result it yields? And it's this, a strong confidence, right? One powerful result, a strong confidence. In the fear of the Lord, the passage says, one has strong confidence. And think about it, it's because God created you. He did, he created you. Do you know what happens when you have a genuine experience with the creator of the universe? You see him, or you get to experience a glimmer of what he's like, or you get to experience more of the fullness and the beauty of that. And because he is the creator, because he's the originator of all things, in him all things hold together, it reflects back on you in a way that you suddenly come to learn something and know something about you and know something for yourself, you guys. This is huge. Let me say it this way. When you encounter the God of the universe, who is full of unconditional love and limitless grace, you find yourself going, oh my gosh, that's who you are, and you made me, which means I'm unconditionally loved. The most powerful being in the universe who speaks it all into being and holds it all together and binds us all into existence and breathes purpose and life. And he anchors me in unconditional love, and his grace becomes a limitless force for my life. That's who he is, which means that's me. That's also mine. When you encounter the God of the universe who is in all things and works through all things and who is working together for the good of all things, you see, wow, God, you have been telling this much larger story throughout all of human existence and time. And then you suddenly step back and it reflects back on you and you go, oh my gosh, you made me. You gave me life. I'm a part of that story. My story's connected into something bigger than I could have ever imagined. You breathed life and purpose into me that I could have never thought. You've tied me into something bigger. My breath matters. My life each day that I wake up, the minutes I spend, the things I do, what's going on in my heart, this matters because God's breathed purpose and energy and dynamic into it because it's who he is and he's telling one great big story. You see, friends, when you see who God is, it reflects back on you and it breathes into who you are. When you genuinely experience who God is, you also realize who you are because of whose you are. And it becomes this powerful anchor for your soul and for your life, for your very being, right? When you experience who God is and the reality of it, he becomes an answer to the deepest cares and questions inside of you. And this is not a small thing. Don't miss this. Because there are certain questions that are inside of all of us, and they are big deals. For some of us, they're bigger deals than others, and it depends on how we're shaped and brought up, but these become huge questions for people to wrestle with, and we all do in some way, shape, or form. Like, am I loved? Am I valuable? Do I have purpose? Do I belong? Am I secure? Am I worthy? These are huge questions that we as human beings all wrestle with. And they're really important. And you know what's so important about what this passage is teaching us? It's this: in the Yirah of God, the definitive answer to all of those questions is what, friends? Yes. It's a definitive answer, just yes. Because of who he is, reflecting back on you, you get your answers here. This is who he is. This is who you are. In the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence. Now to Curacao. When my family and I were in Curacao, we basically stayed at this house that was on a cliff over the ocean. I always thought that like every island is nothing but beaches, you know, like the beaches just go into the ocean. I didn't realize some places are just cliffs into the water constantly. And that's basically Curacao. And so that's where we were staying. And so, you know, there'd be ladders down to the water at some places or stairs or something, but there are all these cliffs just into this beautiful blue water. And what I loved about it is it was so clear, the water was so clear that when you stood, you know, on a small cliff 40 feet over the water and you looked down, you could still identify species of fish and types of coral that were like 20 to 30 feet in the water, standing 40 feet above it. And I was just like, this is amazing. It's like an aquarium, whether you're in it or out of it. It's fantastic. And so one day I'm standing about 40 feet over the water, just looking over a ledge, and I see a French angelfish. And if you don't know what that is, totally okay. They're my favorite. I love these things. I think they're funny. They make me laugh, which is a problem when you're holding your breath underwater. They like just, I filled with wonder when I see them, and I probably harass them too much by chasing them around and just wanting to like, you know, be near them and stuff. And I love them. They're my favorite. And so I saw one in the water, and it's this big one. It's black and yellow and white, and I can see it. And I lean over and I call my daughter, who had been the one who was freediving with me. I'm like, Harmony, come over here and look at this. There's a French angelfish. And she starts walking over. She gets about 3 feet away from me, and then she goes, no, I'm good. And I laugh because I suddenly remember she's terrified of heights. She hates heights, has for a long time. Like she's not gonna go be like, yeah, let me just lean out over that ledge, whether it's water below or not. Doesn't want to do it. And I go, it's okay. Here, I'll hold your hand. There's a French angelfish. I want to show you. And so she walks up to me and she grabs my hand and then very cautiously comes walking up, and she's trying to lean over. And so I just reach my hand around and I hold her by the waist like this. And I'm like, it's right there. And then without like any prompting or skipping a beat, she just leans all the way out. So now her feet are on the land and she's like leaning way out over the ledge, and I'm holding her by the waist. Some of you are clearly scared of heights because your eyes are showing it right now. And she looks down and she's like, oh, cool, that's awesome, thanks. And then turns and starts to walk away. And I'm so perplexed. And I look at her and I go, I call her kid sometimes. Like, kid, what happened to the fear of heights? Like, what happened? And she just looks at me without skipping a beat. And she just looks and goes, you're my dad and you love me. You would never drop me. And then just walks off. And it wasn't a moment for her. Like I doubt it even flagged or registered. For me, it was such a big deal because as someone who always thinks about God, I just found myself going like, I think that's what it's supposed to be like for us with God. I think that's what it's like. So guys, when you experience the awe of God, when you experience the presence of God, just who he genuinely is, and you see the love and the grace that's there, and you see this boundless power, and you see that he holds all things together, and you see that you're a part of all this, and there's purpose and worth and value and love and the answers to some of those deepest questions in you, it allows you to finally settle yourself as a human being. It allows you to become this kind of gift where you have this strong kind of confidence where suddenly it's like, well, of course God has me. I'm gonna lean out. Well, it's just who he is. Why wouldn't I lean to see what he has to show me or where he has to take me or what he wants to move in me or what these pieces are? This is who God is, right? In the fear of the Lord, one has this strong confidence. And can I tell you that then becomes a gift? Because who are the safest people in your life? They're the people who know who they are internally in a way that they're not asking you to become the answer for their deepest of questions. The safest people internally, the safest people in your life, they're the people who go, I know my worth and I know my value and I know my purpose and I know these things and I hold them. That's secure in God. You don't have to get under the squat rack. You don't have to lift that weight for me. I just want to love you where you are. I want you to go on a journey exploring who God created you to be. I want you to know the beauty and the truth of everything that he has for you. You don't have to be something for me. It's like me holding my daughter. I didn't need her to be, she could have walked away and that would have been fine. And when she leaned out, I was like, what's happening? And just the trust that's there. And it's like, look what I have to show you. We get to be this way with God. We get to be this way with others. And when you give this gift to your family, when you let God answer the questions that only he can answer because they're big and they're the ones that only he can hold, and you don't put that like weight on the bar for someone else in your life, it makes you a really safe place, which brings us to the third part here. One significant impact. We end up becoming a refuge for our families and the people that we care about, our children in particular, right? What does this proverb have to teach us about relating with our family, guys? It's this. When we let God answer our deepest questions and cares, we don't have to put the weight on our family to be the answer for us. And I just can't begin to tell you how important that is. And I think some of you know it because you have been living this out with someone else in your life for a long time. There are some questions, and I just want to say this so clearly, there are some questions that no other person can become the answer for because only God is big enough to answer them and anchor them in you. And when we look to our family members or the people we're closest about to demonstrate that or become that answer for us, the weight is too heavy to bear because they're just not God. God's got the shoulders to carry that load. And what happens is your knees begin to shake, your legs begin to buckle, and you find yourself wanting to crumble to the floor, all right? But the awe of the Lord, I know who I am. I know that I'm loved. I know that I have worth and that I have value. I know that God breathes purpose and life and all of these things into me. So what then happens to that? And now I have this strong kind of confidence. I know whose I am and how that makes me. So I get to become like the safest place in the world, a refuge, if you will, for the people in my life that I care about. And this is such a big deal. Friends, if we're struggling with our own worth and value and significance, and purpose, meaning. If we're struggling with all these things, inevitably what we will do, simply because we're human, and not because you're bad, and not because you're dumb, or not because any of us are, just because we're human and this is about as natural as can be, we'll begin placing the weight of making ourselves feel worthy and valued on the people that we care about most. Because they're the ones who care about us and trust us enough and are willing to carry it. Think of it this way. If you're a parent, can I tell you something that'd be really easy to do? And this is whether you're going to have adult children or kids in your home. If you're a parent, you'll find it easy to view your kids as your report card. It's a phrase I get a friend of mine named Jim Palmer. He said this was one of the great lessons he learned in his life. He was like, I got to a space where I realized, man, I wish I hadn't made my kids my report card for so long. And that's just resonated with me for a really long time. And it's easy to do, isn't it? It is. It's easy to do. You'll need them to succeed. Not simply for yourselves, or not simply for themselves, but for you. Because you need them to succeed, because there's something you need from them for you. You'll need them to do the things that you like or that you love with a kind of excellence or a passion or some kind of desire, because that's the way you see them and that's how you think their life ought to be, regardless of who God has made them to be or who they are, right? And that will help you feel good as a parent. When they fail or struggle, instead of finding empathy to love them and meet them where they are and say, man, this is really hard. I want to lean in and I'm going to meet you where you are. And there's always tomorrow, and let's pick this back up. Instead, what they'll find from us as parents is our embarrassment, right? Or our judgment. And they'll quickly become aware that there's shame involved in all of this that they then get to carry like on that bar on their back. Because we needed them to be a certain way and act a certain way in order for us to manage our reputation. And it's hard when you feel that way, isn't it? It's hard to experience those things. See, when we do this, instead of being a confident refuge that becomes a blessing for the people in our lives that we love and care about the most, we end up becoming like a tall tower that they have to climb in order to find their worth and value and to hear that enough is enough. But you know what ends up happening, and some of you know this because your legs are worn out and your soul is tired, is you can climb that all that you want, and you can't answer that question for somebody else because no matter how much you climb that tower, enough is never really enough. It doesn't end. Because there are some questions that only God can answer for us. And anyone else, it just becomes weight upon their shoulders that's too heavy for them to bear. I had this illustrated to me in a really poignant way, in a really unexpected way. I found myself in a conversation with a man in his late 50s, early 60s. It was in the garden center at Home Depot. I know, that's not what you were expecting. I wasn't either. Right? I was shopping at Home Depot to get some plants because it was the time of season to like plant some plants. And I got into that at one point. So I was like, cool, let's do this. And so I'm walking around and I see somebody that I recognize and he recognizes me. And he's like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, good. How are you? And kind of know each other. I don't know his exact age, right? Like, because we're in the garden center of Home Depot. So like late 50s, like I said, early 60s. He goes, hey, how are things? And I just was like, oh, good. How are things with you? And he goes, not good. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Like just life in general or... garden section of Home Depot. And he goes, no, actually my dad died a few months ago. And I was suddenly like, oh, and I'm just standing there holding my plant. And I just didn't know what to say. So I just said, I'm really sorry to hear that. And that means your last couple of months have probably been you walking through some grief and some sadness. And I bet that's pretty difficult. I'm sorry. And then I was expecting to see his face turn sad and it didn't. He looked exasperated. That's the best word that I could get, like this frustration, annoyed, exasperated. And he goes, I wish I could get to some of the grief and the sadness part, but right now I'm just so angry. And I did not know. I was like, Garden Center, Home Depot, guys. I'm like, well, I'll put the plant down. I'm okay. And I just was like, well, I'm sorry. That sounds like a lot to carry. That sounds really hard. And then he said something with pointed clarity. It was like punctuated clarity that few people ever articulate as precisely as he did. And here's this statement. He says, I spent my whole life trying to be the person that he would see as worthy and enough. And now he's dead and I don't know what it is I'm even, like whose acceptance I'm even living for. Like whose worth and value I'm even trying to get. Whose approval, right? And I heard that and I was like, that is like a distilled moment of insight and clarity that this gentleman just articulated to me. And I didn't, again, Garden Center of Home Depot, I didn't know what to say. So I just said, that's a really powerful and clear insight that it seems like you have arrived at. And then he just kind of rolled his eyes at me and laughed. And he basically said, no, that's just how you get to be my age and not know who you really are. And now I absolutely didn't know what to say. And I was like, yeah, sorry. And then he recognized that we didn't know what, he recognized we're in the Garden Center of Home Depot. And he was just like, well, hey, thanks for being in here to listen. Have a great day. And then he walks off and shop. And then I just stood there contemplating life at its core for a very long time. Because it was this powerful illustration. Do you see this? Here you have a person that essentially at some point in time was like, man, this person is unhappy. This person has not answered these questions for themselves and I will become their answer. Or maybe that weight was put on me. So he got in there and he stood up underneath the squat rack and they got loaded with weight and somebody else said, you need to carry a little more and you need to do a little more here. And then he kept carrying that and he has been carrying that for decades to the point that his late father's passed. And now he's holding weight on his shoulders and he's like, I don't know how to put this down. And I don't even know who I am. Do you see? This is somebody in their late 50s, early 60s, you guys. This is not the front end of life. And it made me sad. But I recognized, man, this is just people trying to figure out family. This is just people trying to do their best to love one another in all the complexity, and it gets complicated sometimes, doesn't it? Here's what I know, given what we've talked about today. I know that in this room right now, there are those of us that have struggled ourselves with our own sense of purpose, worth, value, significance, belonging, some of those deeper questions. And because we struggle with those answers in ourselves, I just know that there are moments and times where in the lives of the people we care about, we take that weight and we put it on them to help carry it for us or with us. We ask them to do it. And I know that, and not because you're bad, because you're human, because we're us. And it's just kind of part of the deal. It's really easy to do. I also know that in a room like this today, that there are those of you who are in this place and you have been the person who's had that weight across your shoulders and you have been carrying that. And for some of you, it's relatively new and you're like, I don't like this and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I don't know, I think I could do this a little longer. And others of you have been doing this for so long that it's like a burden that you bear and you don't know how to stop. And you feel your own life kind of shrinking under the weight of all of these things. Some of you have been carrying the weight of trying to make someone you love feel loved for so long, and no matter what you do, enough never seems to be enough, and what you do never seems to be never seems to be seen as enough. And it's hard, but you know how to do it. You know how to carry that weight. Some of you have been carrying the weight of trying to make someone you care about feel worthy and valued and like they have purpose, and yet despite all the things that you do or all the ways you show up or all the places you go, here, I'll help carry it, and you can see how I do it, and I'll do this for you. They just keep pointing out all the lack that's around them and the lack that's in you. And you don't know what to do with any of this because it's getting heavier and heavier and harder to carry. And there are some of you, whether young or old, that have been fighting to make someone feel proud enough so that they can finally have enough as whatever they are, so that they'll have enough. And enough's never enough, and you're getting tired and frustrated and resentful, and it's like your legs are shaking and your knees are buckling because a squat bar has just been loaded a little too heavy on your back. And can I just encourage you, friends? What would happen if we just asked the question, am I putting weight on somebody else? Maybe I don't have to. What would happen if those of us who feel that could say, you know what, maybe I want to let God become the answer to those questions that no one else can answer for me and no one else can carry for me? What would happen if those of us who have that bar across our back said, you know what, I don't have the strength to carry somebody else's life. I can love them, I can show up, but I can't carry this. So maybe I need to ditch the weight. For whoever you are, whatever side of that equation you find yourself on, the good news is that the same path is the same path for both. And it's this. I want to go back to the passage today. In the yirah of the Lord, to allow yourself that experience. And I know that might sound weird, but this is pivotal. This is huge. Friends, I want to challenge us to allow yourself to experience this reality of who God is in you so that it can become that reality in you, so you can become a refuge for people around you. Allow yourself to experience the unconditional love of God in all of its power, right? When you ask the question, am I loved? Let your answer be found in God. Let your answer be anchored there. Let your answer be definitively answered by Jesus on the cross and a God who loved you before it and a God who loves you after it. Let your answer be anchored because it's who he is. And if you're a person that's seeking to get approval so that you can know that you're loved or somebody else can feel loved, can I just challenge you? You can't carry that upon your back. And if you set it down, it doesn't make you any less loved by God. The unconditional love is there for you because of who God is, whether this rests upon your shoulders or not. Friends, allow yourself to experience the worthiness found in the grace of God. If you're trying to carry somebody else's worth and value, it's too heavy to carry. Jesus' death on the cross is like a definitive answer once and for all of time is, do I have worth and value? God goes, yes, I'd pay this for you. Do I have worth and value? Yes, this is what I would give you so that you would know and never have to ask that question again. I give you the greatest cost that I have. I give you everything I am. You are worth me. This is the thing that he answered. Let that become a definitive answer and let grace become something that you practice in your life. Here's the thing. I wish I could just snap my fingers and go, and you suddenly go, oh my gosh, you're right. I get it. I can't. I can't even do it in my own life. If I could, church would be going a lot different, like everywhere, right? All I can do is say, maybe that we put obstacles or things in our way, and what if we didn't? What if we allowed ourselves that experience to step into that? And in the meantime, what if we practiced it? Practice being a person who lives in the unconditional love of God. Practice being a person who's fueled by grace. And then the last thing, friends, is this. Allow yourself to experience purpose and belonging in God. I want to say this really clearly. Your family might be your ministry, but it's not your purpose. Your family might be your ministry, but it's not your purpose. Your purpose is something that God gives to you, that God answers for you because of who he's created you to be. Meaning if the world around you shifts and change, you don't lose it because he hasn't left the building. Does this make sense? Here, to put this more clearly, your family, for whatever reason, I would hope that never happens, you could suddenly find yourself in a situation where you no longer have access to anyone else in your family. You don't lose your purpose in that moment. Perhaps your ministry's just changed, depending on how you look at it. Because that's in you because of who God is. He anchors that question. He anchors that value in you. And nobody can carry that but you. Your life matters. You have purpose and worth and value. See, friends, when we step into our families anchored in the fear of the Lord because of who he is, we see who we are. And we stand with the kind of confidence to do that. We become this tremendous gift for the people we love. We become that refuge where other people who are asking the same questions and journeying in the same way get to be freed up to find those answers for themselves and go on that special journey with God just like we get to. It is a great gift. It is a power for families. And it is my hope and prayer for you. May God be with you and may you allow yourself to be with him. And may that be a blessing in your families in the year to come. I want to close today by reading the next verse after verse 26 as a prayer for you all. And it's this, verse 27. The fear of the Lord, the yirah of the Lord, is a fountain of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. May it be true in your lives as well, friends. Can I pray for you real quick? God, we love you and we thank you. And if anybody's hurting in this room because they've been carrying weight for a long time, give them the freedom to drop the weight. If it's not theirs to carry, give them the wisdom, Lord. If there's ways to come alongside and love the people in our families and be with and all these things, but Lord, if there's a moment where we're carrying something that is not ours to carry, give us the courage to drop the weight. And when we do, help us to know whose we are. Help us to have deep answers to those questions for ourselves. Lord, if there's those of us in this that have been struggling with those questions for a long time and we keep putting weight on other people in our lives, give us wisdom to open our eyes that we can see it. Give us the courage to pursue answers to our own questions. And give us the strength to step fully into the lives that you've given us. We want to see you. We want to know you as you actually are. And we're thankful that we get to be a church who gathers together this morning. In Jesus' name we pray all of these things. Amen.